The air in the lawyer's office was thick, like the moment before a storm breaks, when my sister's laugh sliced through the silence. "It's all mine," she crowed, her voice sharp with glee. "Dad left you nothing, Ethan." Her words hit me like a fist, but it was my mother's face, pale, trembling, her eyes darting to the floor, that made my chest tighten. She knew something. Something she wasn't saying. I sat frozen, the leather chair creaking under me. The will's pages fanned out on the mahogany desk like a deck of cruel cards. My wife, Clara, squeezed my hand under the table. Her touch warm but fleeting, like a breeze that doesn't linger. I wanted to believe it was comfort, but her fingers slipped away too quickly, leaving my palm cold. The lawyer, Mr. Grayson, adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable as he shuffled papers. "Ethan, your father's estate, his house savings, the cabin by the lake, it's all been allocated to your sister, Margaret." Margaret smirked, leaning back in her chair, her manicured nails tapping the armrest. "Told you, Ethan. Dad always knew who the responsible one was." Her tone was a blade, honed by years of sibling rivalry I'd thought we'd buried. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but my mother's silence was louder than Margaret's taunts. She sat across from me, her hands knotted in her lap, her lips pressed into a thin line. Why wasn't she speaking? Why wasn't she defending me? "Clara," I whispered, turning to my wife, searching her face for an anchor. Her hazel eyes met mine, soft but distant, like a lighthouse too far from shore. "Did you know about this?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the hum of the air conditioner. She shook her head, her auburn hair catching the light, but her gaze flicked to my mother for a split second. It was a glance so brief I might have missed it, but it lodged in my gut like a splinter. The meeting dragged on, legal jargon blurring into white noise. I couldn't focus. My father's voice echoed in my head, his gruff laugh, his late-night talks about fairness, about family. He'd promised me the cabin, the place where we'd fished together, where he'd taught me to listen to the wind. Had he lied? Or had something changed? I glanced at Clara again, her posture stiff, her fingers now twisting the hem of her skirt. She'd been quiet lately, distracted. I'd chalked it up to work stress, to the late nights she spent at her office. But now, watching her avoid my eyes, I felt a prickle of doubt. Back home, our small apartment smelled of the lavender candles Clara loved, but the scent felt cloying, suffocating. I poured a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the dim light of the kitchen. Clara was in the living room, scrolling through her phone, her face bathed in blue light. "We need to talk," I said, my voice rougher than I intended. She looked up, startled, her phone slipping onto the couch. "About what?" she asked, her tone light but guarded, like someone stepping around broken glass. "About today. About the will. About why my mother looked like she was hiding something." I set the glass down, the clink against the counter too loud in the quiet. "And why you couldn't look at me in that room." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. She stood, crossing her arms, her silk blouse rustling. "Ethan, you're upset. It's understandable. But don't start seeing things that aren't there." Her voice was smooth, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this. I wanted to believe her, to let her words soothe the ache in my chest, but the splinter in my gut was growing, sharp and insistent. "Did you know?" I pressed, stepping closer. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and the space between us felt like a chasm. "Did you know Dad was going to cut me out?" "No," she snapped, her eyes flashing. But then she softened, her hand reaching for mine. "Ethan, I love you. I'd never keep something like that from you." Her touch was warm again, but it felt like a performance, like the way she'd charm clients at her firm. I pulled my hand away, and her face fell, just for a moment, before she masked it with a smile. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big, Clara's breathing too even, too perfect. I slipped out, grabbing my phone, and sat on the balcony, the city's hum a distant pulse. I scrolled through old texts from my father, searching for clues. There was one from 6 months ago. "Talk to your mother, Ethan. She's got something to tell you." I'd ignored it then, too busy with work, with Clara, with life. Now it felt like a warning I'd missed. The next morning, I drove to my mother's house, the air heavy with the threat of rain. She lived in a small bungalow, the porch sagging under years of neglect. She opened the door, her eyes red-rimmed, her cardigan hanging loose on her frail frame. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't expect you. Why didn't you say anything yesterday?" I asked, stepping inside. The house smelled of old books and stale coffee, a scent that used to comfort me, but now felt oppressive. "You knew about the will, didn't you?" She sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "I wanted to tell you," she said, her voice breaking. "But Clara, she asked me not to." The world tilted. "Clara," I repeated, my voice hollow. "What does Clara have to do with this?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "She came to me months ago, said she was worried about you, about your stability. She said you were drinking too much, that you weren't yourself. She convinced your father you couldn't handle the responsibility of the estate." Her words were a slow poison, seeping into my veins. I didn't believe her at first, but she had proof. Emails, texts, things you'd said. She showed us. I stumbled back, my legs unsteady. Proof? What proof? My mind raced, replaying late nights when Clara would hand me a drink, her laughter too bright, her questions too pointed. Had she been building a case against me? Manipulating my parents, my sister, me? "I'm so sorry, Ethan," my mother sobbed. "I thought I was protecting you." I drove home in a daze, the rain now pounding the windshield. Clara was in the kitchen, humming, chopping vegetables like nothing was wrong. The normalcy of it was obscene. "You lied to them," I said, my voice low, shaking. She froze, the knife hovering over a carrot. "You told my parents I was unstable. You made them think I didn't deserve anything." Her face crumpled, but it wasn't guilt, it was defiance. "You were falling apart, Ethan," she said, setting the knife down. "You were drinking, shutting me out. I was trying to save you from yourself." "Save me?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "You stole my family's trust. You stole my inheritance." "It wasn't about the money," she snapped, her voice rising. "It was about us. About building a life together, without your family's baggage dragging us down." Her words were a confession, raw and unfiltered, and they shattered the last piece of trust one had. She'd orchestrated it all, not out of malice, but out of a twisted belief that she was saving me. Saving us. I walked out, the rain soaking through my jacket, my heart a hollow drum. The cabin, the savings, the house, they didn't matter anymore. What haunted me was the betrayal. The realization that the woman I'd loved had rewritten my life behind my back. And as I stood in the downpour, I wondered if I'd ever known her at all. Or if the man I'd been had been lost long before she'd decided to save me.